Mike Wazowski studied for years. He memorized every technique, every stat, every scaring manual ever printed. He played exactly by the rules. He did everything right. But he never gets to walk through that door. He stays behind the console, a technician, a sidekick. The movie plays it off as a punchline, but pause and watch Mike's face in that exact moment. That's not embarrassment. That's a man watching his entire identity collapse in real time. It's the brutal realization that his life's work is a dead end. And here's the hardest truth. You've been in that exact same room. You played by the rules. You paid your dues. And the universe still chuckled at you. You know exactly how that face feels from the inside out. Let's rewind. Mike didn't just stumble onto the Monsters Inc. scare floor by accident. He'd been mapping this out since he was a kid on a school field trip, just a tiny green outsider who snuck away from the pack to watch a real scarer go to work. He stood in that pitch-black room and felt something physically lock into place, a calling, a destiny, a version of himself that finally made the whole world make sense. So he went home and built his entire personality around it. He put in the reps. He practiced until it hurt. He memorized the Scarer's Handbook the way other kids memorized pop songs. He didn't have an ounce of natural talent, but he had something significantly rarer and infinitely more dangerous. The absolute, unbreakable delusion that sheer effort would be enough. Through every management review that quietly deemed his scare factor non-existent, Mike just kept grinding because the math in his head was dead simple. Outwork everyone. Want it more than breathing. And the universe automatically owes you the prize. He was a grown monster, and he still hadn't let himself consider the terrifying possibility that the math was completely wrong. Here is the easy, safe version of this story. Mike is the plucky underdog who eventually learns his real gift is strategy, not scaring. He accepts his role as the loyal friend, not the flashy frontman. He finds his designated place. It's heartwarming. It's clean. Cue the music. Roll the credits. But watch what the movie actually does with that setup. Watch Mike in the third act. He defies Waternoose, navigates the treacherous door vault, and risks his own life to do the impossible and save the company. He actually pulls it off. He proves definitively that he can do the one impossible thing everyone swore he couldn't. And it doesn't fix a single thing. He walks back through that door, and the world doesn't magically change its mind. He still doesn't become a scarer. The talent ceiling was absolutely real, and it was made of concrete. The dream he sacrificed everything for was fundamentally wrong, and the movie refuses to soften that blow. That is not a heartwarming redemption arc. That is a brutal reckoning. Quick pause. When you watched this, you probably cheered for Mike. You thought his absolute grind and his refusal to give up was the ultimate inspiration. But if part of you is doing the exact same thing right now, sacrificing your peace and your sanity just to prove you belong in a room that wasn't built for you, hit subscribe. Because in a few minutes, I'm going to show you the hidden cost of that hustle. I'm going to show you exactly what happens when you finally realize the game was rigged from day one, and you really need to hear it before you burn out completely. Mike didn't fail the dream failed him. He just spent 2 solid decades refusing to look at the cracks in the foundation. Watch Mike and Sully side by side on the scare floor. It is the ultimate study in unfairness. Sully doesn't crack a single book. He rolls in late, completely unprepared, coasting entirely on a genetic roar that shatters windows without a single drop of sweat. He doesn't love the art of scaring. He doesn't even think about it. It just pours out of him the second he opens his mouth. Pure, unearned talent with absolutely zero devotion. Then you look at Mike. He shows up before the lights are even on. He's taking meticulous notes in color-coded ink. He can dissect the exact theory of fear better than the guy teaching the class. Pure, relentless devotion with zero natural talent. The movie constantly forces them into the same frame so you physically feel the injustice of it. You're supposed to root for Mike. You do root for Mike. And then the film quietly, relentlessly reminds you that cheering for someone's hustle isn't the same thing as the universe agreeing with it. Look at the scare game sequence. Every single time the team needs a tactical strategy, Mike delivers flawlessly. But every time they need raw, terrifying presence, Mike has to step aside. He becomes essential in the exact way he desperately never wanted to be. He is the tactical brain in a world that only hands trophies to the roar. Mr. Waternoose praises Sully as the golden standard, but Mike is just the assistant. Watch Mike's face in that office. Sully looks guilty because he actually broke a rule. Mike just looks devastated and confused because Mike didn't break any rules. He just existed wrong. He was fundamentally not what the system demanded him to be, but it's the mailroom scene in the epilogue that really twists the knife. Mike and Sully start at the absolute bottom of Monsters, Inc., grinding their way up through every single department. The movie plays this up as a massive triumph, a heartwarming montage of earned success, where the long, brutal road finally pays off. But strip away the upbeat music and look at what they are actually building toward. Sully becomes the top scarer on the floor. Mike becomes his scare assistant. The concrete ceiling held perfectly. It didn't break. It just got a little taller before it finally stopped him cold. Here is exactly what Monsters, Inc. did to you. It fed you the exact underdog story you've been conditioned to expect. The late-night study montages, the temporary setbacks, the ragtag team that almost falls apart, the high-stakes final competition where everything's on the line. It hit every single predictable beat of the classic, feel-good, earned-it movie. You know this structure. You've been watching it since you were a kid, and that structure promised you something. It promised you that if Mike simply wanted it enough, he would get it. You were fully in on the deal. You subconsciously signed that contract the exact second the training montage started. And then Pixar looked at the contract, quietly tore it up right in front of you, and handed Mike a clipboard instead of a door. The movie does to you exactly what Mike's life did to him. It let you believe in the system. It let you deeply invest in the logic that effort automatically equals reward. And then it showed you a cold world where that logic has brutal exceptions, and Mike is one of them. You felt the unfairness. That's the entire point. That's the whole movie. Most people walk out of the theater telling themselves a nice, safe little lie. He just found a different path. Same destination, just a different road. But that is the comfort edit. That is what you tell yourself so you don't have to face the truth. The actual movie ends with Mike standing exactly one floor below the concrete ceiling he spent his entire existence trying to shatter. And this is exactly where it stops being about a one-eyed cartoon monster and a naive dream. Because you have done the work. The actual grueling work, not the fake performative kind. You showed up when everyone else stayed home. You read the books, you bought the courses, you burned the midnight oil, you got better, measurably, undeniably better. And then someone with half your preparation and twice your raw, unteachable talent simply strolled into the exact same room and effortlessly claimed the prize you had been sacrificing everything for. You know this feeling. You're sitting in a performance review and your manager says, "This is really solid work," in a tone that heavily implies a but. And you already know exactly what the but is. You've heard different variations of this same but your entire career. It doesn't have a simple fix because it's not actually about the quality of your work. You're sitting at a dinner table with people who are actually doing the thing you desperately want to do, and you are genuinely happy for them. That part isn't a lie. But buried right underneath that polite smile is a devastating question you would never dare say out loud. If not me, after all of that effort, then what was the actual point of it all? You stumble across a post that perfectly articulates your own brilliant idea, written by someone who barely even tried. You quietly close the tab. You don't tell a single soul what you just felt in your chest. You have been grinding through your own personal training montage for years, and nobody had the decency to tell you that the genre of your movie might be completely different. Most people think not being enough just means you didn't try hard enough, like it's a simple deficiency of effort, a failure of willpower, just another personal flaw you can magically fix with more discipline, a better morning routine, or 10,000 hours of practice. But Mike Wazowski's story forces you to look at something much more uncomfortable. Not being enough isn't a measurement of your effort. It's a measurement of the gap between what you naturally possess and what a specific, rigid system is actually built to reward. And sometimes that gap is real. Sometimes you can outwork it and close it. But sometimes, the system was never ever going to pay out what you thought it was offering, regardless of how much of yourself you poured into it. Not being enough for one specific room does not mean you are fundamentally broken. It just means you walked into the wrong room. And the most agonizing part isn't figuring that out. The real agony is realizing you spent the best years of your life believing that specific room was the entire world. Not enough is never a verdict on your worth. It's just a verdict on the match. I know this feeling intimately. I spent 3 solid years grinding on a project I was absolutely convinced I was going to dominate. Not hoping, convinced. I had the math perfectly worked out in my head. I put in the hours, I understood the mechanics deeply, and I cared significantly more than anyone else around me. That level of obsession felt like it had to count for something. It felt like a guaranteed contract with the universe. Then came a specific night. I was sitting in one of those crowded coffee shops, the kind with too many overpriced plants and not nearly enough chairs, reading an email with feedback on something I'd poured months into. The feedback wasn't mean, it was polite, it was careful, and that is exactly what made it the most devastating kind of feedback you can get. The kind where there is absolutely nothing you can fix. The person who wrote it genuinely liked me. They just didn't need the thing I was creating. A friend sitting across the table saw my face drop and asked what was wrong. I looked at her and said, I think I've spent the last 3 years practicing to become something I might not actually be capable of becoming. She didn't offer any toxic positivity. She didn't say, oh, that's not true, keep pushing. She just looked at me and said, yeah, that is a really hard one to sit with. It was the single most honest thing anyone had said to me in months. I didn't stop right then, but I finally stopped pretending that my intense effort automatically guaranteed a successful outcome. That realization is not the same thing as giving up. It just heavily mimics the feeling of it for a little while. Mike Wazowski did not waste his life. The grueling work itself was never wasted. The childhood dream was simply the wrong unit of measurement for his actual worth. Everything you build inside yourself along the way is still standing, even if it's not the exact building you drew on the blueprint. The whole time, we thought this movie was about learning to be the best. It wasn't. It was a brutally honest look at the lie that effort guarantees the outcome. Mike didn't break. He just finally opened his eyes. And right now, you've got the exact same choice. You can stay in that room. Keep burning yourself out for a system that already wrote you off. Or you can finally walk away. If you want to stop watching movies on autopilot and start seeing the psychology underneath, hit subscribe and click the video on your screen, because walking away isn't giving up. It's proof that this time you're building something that doesn't need their blueprint to stand.